I'm sorry if the camera is a little bit shaky. It's a bit windy outside. I think it's about to start raining, but I wanted to get this over with. So, ah, I intend to just let this video keep rolling. I won't make too many cuts. I just want to speak my mind on this until I'm finished. So, with everything that happens in the world, there's just so much shit going on. And anytime I want to make a video about something and I want to write a script and I want to make it as good as I can, but I'm not a scholar. I'm not that type of dude. I just kind of need to talk about it. I need to vent a little bit. And when I try to make too big of a deal about it for myself, like to make a video, I usually just get overwhelmed and I don't end up doing anything. So, but I feel like I really need to say something about this, especially because obviously it's been at the forefront of media and of my mind, honestly, for I don't know how long, years now, probably. So I want to make this video not only so that people can, see where I stand on this and what I think and how I reason, but also kind of just having this video kind of for the record, if you get what I mean, in the sense that in 50 years, in 50 years, for example, I can look back on this and I can compare it to what I think then, and maybe compare it to the common consensus of the world, because I mean the public sentiment of Israel has definitely it's poor. It's poor. But what I mean is more so like if governments have come around to condemning it, if there's been any major actions taken, because of course there's been a lot of stuff in the UN condemning this and officially calling this a genocide and stuff like that. But you haven't really seen anything too consequential happen yet, and let's get to it when we get to it. But first of all, I want to just speak very clearly, very fundamentally about what I think about this and how I reason, right? Because again, I'm not a scholar. I'm not that type of dude. I haven't done research like that. I haven't read the books. But I don't feel I need to. I have I've listened to a lot of podcasts and I've seen a lot of Instagram reels and all that stuff. Um, and I don't want to be the dude who's like, oh, I have pattern recognition. That's a bit corny, but I do have pattern recognition, as does all of us, and that's why it's so egregious to see some people still not calling this for what it is. 1 second. Okay, wonderful. We're still rolling. So basically, let's just get into this, all right? And again, I was going to have a script for this, but I'm just going to let my mind do the work, because otherwise, again, I get a bit overwhelmed and I don't really know what to say. I'm a bit of a perfectionist as well. So, look, Zionism, the ideology of Zionism, I think, is inherently genocidal and also inherently unsustainable. And I'll tell you why. So first of all, the decree of Zionism, basically the goal, the aim of Zionism, is to establish a Jewish state in the Holy Land, or Palestine, right? And what does this term Jewish state mean? It's a very nebulous term, and I think it is nebulous for a reason, so that it's very difficult to discuss it, right? But generally, what the founding and the leading figures of Zionism mean when they say Jewish state is a state where the majority of the population are Jewish and more precisely of European descent. You have a lot of Russian Jews, Ukrainian Jews in Israel who are not, Semites, and also the Jews that already were there, the Arab Jews, the Yemeni Jews, was it Somali or Ethiopian? It was like some East African country also had some Jews. I think it was Somali Jews that were also treated very poorly by the Ashkenazi settlers. So yeah, basically the Zionists want a white Jew majority population in the Holy Land. Okay, uh, so look, a Jewish state, just that, like a state where the majority of the population are Jews, there's no inherent problem with that. Obviously, like I'm very charitable towards all religions. I think that, Christianity, Islam, even Judaism, with the bad rep it has, I think I don't inherently condemn any of them. I think they can all be used for good. So, at a base level, a Jewish state isn't immoral. But the problem is that when, if let's say in the 1800s, in the beginning of the 1800s, you look at the Holy Land and you look at Palestine, there aren't any white Jews there. There just aren't any white Jews there. And so when the Zionists come along and they say, okay, we want to establish a Jewish state, when you look, if you want to establish a population in a place where there isn't one, you want to establish a Jewish majority population in a place where there isn't one, there really is only one way to do that. And it is to have, first of all, like mass migration, use all the tricks in the book to get people to move to this place. And there's a lot of, documented instances of that. But most of all, you displace, you ethnically cleanse, and you commit genocide to make it unlivable for the people that you want to remove. You establish an apartheid system probably. I mean, these are all things that have happened. This is not like me theorizing what you should do. This is what they have done. You establish an apartheid system. You make the place unlivable, basically, for the people who live there. And since the Nakba in 1948, with 1 million people being displaced, never having the right of return fulfilled to the state, there's an obvious immorality in that. And that's what I mean when I say that Zionism is inherently genocidal, because to establish a population in a place where there isn't one, and not to integrate, but to remove the people who are already there and establish yourself. Like, obviously you are going to have to commit some genocidal acts. And now, obviously it's one of the most horrific things I've ever seen, and I think anyone has ever seen, what they've done to, for me, one of the most striking things that really fucking tear me apart is when you see these satellite images before and after, and it's like, first it's an image of a village or a city before the kind of the ramping up of the genocide that's been going on since October the 7th, but even before that, and you see a picture before, and then it slowly transitions to the picture after, which is like today, and the whole place is just wiped off the map. Because the thing that happens when you have a diagram like that is that you really tap into the microcosmos of, like, there's people living here. Like, I can see this house that is just gone. Where are those people that live there? Maybe they're dead or displaced. There's this one very famous, I think one of the most famous ones is like this, the main street by the coast in Gaza. And there's this roundabout and this long road and these houses. You have these apartments, and then by the coast. And then you get the next image, the after image. Even the road is destroyed. Like, you have these beat up cars driving on mud roads with refugee tents, and it's just a mess. It's demolished. And obviously why that video is so famous is because it really strikes you. To me, that's like, these are real people. And I guess that's the crux of it. These are real people. But yeah, so that's why I think that Zionism is inherently genocidal, because if you want to establish you want a majority population. You don't just want to live there. You want to take the people that live there out of there and then sell yourself there. And obviously Zionism comes from the tradition of Western, colonialism, settler societies, imperialism, the expansionist agenda. And that's what I also wanted to talk about because, we all know this idea of Greater Israel, right? Which is just not, like, Greater Israel covers so many sovereign countries that you can't say, like, that's a justifiable ambition. It's just not, like, anyways. But now, again, with the expansionist agenda, they are going into Lebanon now, committing, again, some of the worst atrocities we've seen. We should have all by now seen that video, or there's a couple of them, where the biggest bomb, the biggest non-nuclear bomb ever was dropped on a Lebanese village. Just wiped it off the map. I mean, again, it's difficult for us to really take this in, like conceptualize the kind of devastation that causes. Because it's so far away, because I'm standing by this beautiful lake with the birds singing, and I'm in a free, liberal country, rich country. And probably because I'm I've never really had to think about these things naturally. I've never been in any relationship where I have been the oppressed one. You get what I mean? I've never had any prejudice against me, nothing like that. And so it's difficult for all of us that haven't really been and experienced this type of stuff to even really take in what's going on. But again, humongous bomb, wiped out an entire village. And they're not even supposed to be there, right? They've already pushed wow, now the camera's really shaking. But the border that they were supposed to not cross in Lebanon, well, first of all, they established, what was it, a buffer zone, a security zone. That was already against international law. Not that they have ever cared about that, but they weren't supposed to cross that one. And now it's been redrawn, the red line. And now they'll cross that again. They went into, what was it, like a castle, and then they dropped a huge fucking bomb. Yeah, it's disgusting. It's despicable. It's evil. So what more did I want to say? I guess, look, yeah, kind of how you need, because you also have to think about, how does this even happen? And again, I'm not really a historian. I know a bit about the history of the Holy Land or whatever. I know there's been a lot of conflict over it, over the thousands of years that people have lived there. But also, and this was the thing I wanted to bring up as well, there's so much talk. There's so much talk about who has the rightful claim to the land, who is the indigenous people, whose forefathers lived there. I don't really care that much. What I fucking care about is that materially, in the real world, there has been a genocide committed. People are dying. People have been displaced. I don't care so much about the rhetoric of, who has the rights to the land. Because, the real issue here is that people are dying. People are being slaughtered. People are in open-air concentration camps. So when you have all this, look, no rhetoric could ever justify what's happened. That's basically what I'm trying to get at. You can't justify this, explain this with words. It doesn't work. There is no way to do it, because the material reality is that this atrocity has been committed on no justifiable grounds. But this is also what I wanted to talk about, right? Because to even carry this out, obviously there needs to be a pretense, some type of pretense. And this gets to the point why I think that Zionism is inherently unsustainable. Because obviously there's a lot of ways you can justify this. You can say that, Muslims are terrorists or whatever, and all of that stuff. But basically what you're going to say is that you're under attack. The most potent tool at their disposal is to say that, well, we're under attack, so naturally we have no choice but to defend ourselves. Um, and this means, like, when this is the whole premise that the existence of your country depends on, of course you're never going to see peace. Of course you're never going to be able to take part in any peace dealings. You're never going to be able to respect any ceasefires. You're never going to be able to concede anything, right? Because if you do, then you lose everything. So, and I think a lot of people have realized this as well. Obviously, everything I'm saying is not the things I have come up with. I've listened to other people that are way smarter than me, but this is at least what I have collected and put together. So, Israel can never be at peace. Is the idea, because if they had nobody to fight, then they would have to answer for what they have done. And they can't do that because obviously, again, there's no way to justify what they have done. So yeah, they need to be constantly fighting, constantly trying to expand. And again, it's like, where does it stop, man? Where does it stop? Okay, they're in Lebanon now. Are they just gonna keep pushing north? 1 million Lebanese people have been displaced, and there is, some of the rhetoric used by these Israeli officials is just like, how could you say this about other human beings? Relatively recently, I don't know exactly who said it. Was it Ben Gvir? I don't know. Or maybe, what's his name? Yeah, the guy who said, like, for every Palestinian mother that cries, 200 Lebanese mothers must weep, or some shit like that. Is like, what? What? He said Lebanon needs to burn. Okay, so what are we doing here? I mean, Lebanon is a recognized member of the UN. Like, what? There's no discussion here. Like, a lot of the scapegoaty arguments that you see used about Palestine, like, oh, there's no Palestinian identity, there's no established state, which again are bullshit arguments, but you can't make that with Lebanon. And so now it's so naked, it's so clear that they never had an agenda of peace, of coexistence in the Middle East. And again, they have to keep fighting. They have to constantly be at war so that they can claim that they are defending themselves. And it's just a very unfortunate situation all the way through. Yeah. I mean, I really fucking wonder how it's all gonna play out, how it's gonna look in 50 years, what kind of words we're gonna use to describe this whole situation. I hope that it's gonna be viewed in the same way as the Holocaust, right? I mean, it's a genocide. A genocide is a genocide. Again, it's unfathomable the amount of suffering that goes on in these kinds of places that are subject to cruel, vicious, relentless, genocidal ethno-supremacists. So, man, yeah. And that's why it's also a bit overwhelming for me, because I, like, look at this place, man. It's just earth. I have the ducks behind me. I have the birds flying in the air. I'm in a free country. Yesterday, I went with my little sister and played football on a pitch. Like, yeah, so blessed. But at the same time, you get a bit of survivor's guilt. You get a bit of, like, what the fuck is happening, And, I can talk about some broader concepts now, because obviously I've been more into geopolitics and kind of what it means to be a part of humanity and what kind of responsibilities you should put on yourself. For example, the fact that states, nations, like a nation, a state is nothing more than something that should protect the rights of people, right? Nations don't have rights. People have rights. And that's the whole discussion of, like, does Israel have the right to exist as a Jewish state? It's like, well, no state has to right to exist? Does the Ottoman Empire have the right to exist? I don't know. Like that's such a weird question, right? Like, do they? Does Turkmenistan have the right to exist? I don't fucking know. That's not my area of expertise. But answer me that before you ask me the question of, does Israel have the right to exist? It's like, yeah. So, I mean, nations come and go, but people have the rights to self-determination, the rights to, I mean, they're human rights. And also, we get into this now. I think we're deep enough into the video to start talking about some of the groups that have been resisting the occupation. So, Hamas, Hezbollah, they are both creations, at least in the way, Hezbollah definitely, but Hamas in the nature that we see it today. They're all consequences of the Israeli occupation. And if you can't accept that as a premise, that Hamas and Hezbollah are creations of the of Zionism, basically, they are consequences of Zionism. If you can accept that, then it's just fucked. Like then, because that is the case. It's not like there was this terrorist organization in the Middle East and then Israel just happened to settle next to them and then they started killing them. It's like, no. But understanding that people have the right to resist an occupation, especially when their own state can't defend them. And that's what we were seeing now in Lebanon as well. I mean, the thing with Hezbollah was that, or I think if I remember correctly, the government wasn't capable of really holding off the Israeli offensive, the aggression, right? And so the people, Hezbollah was created as a response to that. And again, people had the right to self-determination and to resist an occupying force. And that is essentially what Hamas is, what Hezbollah is. They are also terrorist organizations. I'm not going to deny that. But in the same way, kind of, that Al-Qaeda and ISIS are consequences of U.S. imperialism. It's like, and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, okay, so Israel has to fight against Hamas, but Hamas were created because of Israel. So it's this circular thing where you justify your offensive on the defense, on the resistance. It's so strange, but obviously it's a tactic. It's the way to go about this if you're an Israeli official trying to sway the conscience of the world, saying that there's a terrorist organization that you need to defeat in the tunnels, and so you bomb all the schools and the hospitals and everything, and the also the concept that peace, there's no lasting peace without justice. Before you get peace, real peace, you need justice. I'll just check that we're still rolling. Yeah, we are. Wonderful. 23 minutes. Okay. Yeah, again, that for lasting peace, you need justice first. And that's the thing as well with when we're talking about solutions to the situation. If we're talking about two-state, if we're talking about whatever we're talking about, you need to understand that if we don't have justice, then we're not going to have a lasting peace. That's the whole point. Whenever you see these kind of figureheads of resistance, and they're asked in interviews or whatever, they're asked, like, why won't you just have peace talks? Why won't you just, stop the fighting, talk it out, and try to find some way to just stop this from happening, stop, the killing. And it seems like a rational thing to say, right? Like, shouldn't you just go to the enemy, however much you hate them, and try to find a way to just stop fighting so the people from both sides stop dying, innocent people, civilians, right? But what you need to understand, and I think this is where you really tap into the leftist mindset, is that how could you expect me to stop resisting, in the sense that if somebody is taking something from me, and then we have a fight about it, and then somebody comes and says, just stop the fighting, I don't want to have any more fighting, and they expect me to leave and just accept that they took what I had. Like, it's that kind of thing that, for example, obviously there's been a lot of resistance movements in all throughout human history. But yeah, this idea that let's just stop fighting. It's like, no, the reason we're fighting is because there is some very unjust thing in the world. That's why we're fighting. We can't stop fighting until we've cleared that up, you know? So that's also something you need to keep in mind, because then it also explains why in so many cases when there is peace but there's no justice, there's going to be war again. There's going to be conflict again. When there is this underlying injustice, then there is going to be people trying to resist this injustice. That's just a human nature thing. That's what we see with the civil rights movement in America. For example, there's this grave injustice. There's peace, but there's very, very unjust society. And then the people rise up and resist. And that's a good thing to do, I think. And again, you don't want to tap into too much into the violence, but you also need to understand that, I mean, peaceful protest can be very effective, of course, and if you live in a democracy, in a functioning democracy, then violent uprising is not really necessary, I don't think. I mean, I live in Sweden. Right now we have a pretty right-wing government. The most powerful man in the world, the most powerful man in Sweden is not the prime minister, but he's still the most powerful politically, I would say. He's a Zionist. He was down in Israel, recorded a documentary about Islamism. Like, what are we doing? That's the most powerful man in Sweden politically. And then the ministers are also Zionists. We have one girl who famously wore an IDF shirt and did like a tour of the... Yeah, it's just crazy. It's a bunch of bullshit right now and spineless people in the Swedish parliament. Anyways, what more do I want to say? Man, I mean, just the fact that we're all human, man. Like, there's... I guess I could just drag this one as well, that, you can... In Sweden right now, there's a big conversation about Islam and how there's Islamic extremism. But, you can't really have a Muslim answer for the Taliban. You can't do that. You can't require that. The same way you can't have a Muslim answer for the Taliban in Afghanistan. You can't have a Christian answer for the KKK. You can't have a Jew answer for Israel. That last one, eh? That last one. You cannot have a Jew answer for Israel because there are Jews that are not Zionists. And I think that's really where you need to do that separation as well. That's maybe something I should bring up as well when I talk about this, is that I'm not anti-Semitic. In what way am I, eh? No, I mean, Judaism and Zionism are two completely different things. Or they need to be separated, because otherwise you become anti-Semitic. I mean, there's a lot of these guys, a lot of my friends as well, that don't get this nuance. They start blaming Jews. And I mean, historically, you could say whatever you want, but man, you shouldn't blame a religion for something like that. You should blame evil people using religion for bad stuff, for atrocities. And then on the converse side, it's, there are Zionists that aren't Jewish. There's a lot of them, actually. And it's mainly rich people and politicians and people in power of different kinds. And I think that's really telling as well. Uh, so, yeah, basically, I have no problem with any religion inherently. I think if you read the texts in their most favorable way, which I think is what you should do to try to, um, you know, make it compatible with the way you want things to be. For example, in Sweden, yes, of course, you can read the Quran in an extremist way, in a very hyper conservative way, orthodox way, but you don't need to. You don't need to. I mean, I saw this clip the other day of, actually, the other week, of what's his name, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, the very famous figure. He there was this clip of I think it was the parliament or something like that in Egypt, where the Muslim Brotherhood had proposed that he should make the hijab obligatory for all women, and he just laughed that off, and he said, "What? So we should make it obligatory, yeah? Okay, you could go wear one." He said that to the people who proposed that. He said, "You go wear one." So I like that, and I mean, if you bring that up to someone in Sweden right now who's a right-wing person who thinks that all Muslims want Sharia law while they don't even understand what Sharia law is, I mean, that's cognitive dissonance at its finest. But look, and if you show them something like that, like this Egyptian leader that laughs in the face of people that propose that you should have obligatory hijabs, how do they respond to that? And it's like they really can't, because they are racist and Islamophobes, and they don't really think for themselves. And yeah, I mean, I guess I could tie it all back into here with the one true struggle, which is class struggle. You know, these people who are disaffected, who are struggling economically, struggling spiritually with the very soul-sucking nature of capitalist societies, or I should say neoliberal societies, consumerism and all that. When you live in the spiritual and economic poverty, you need something to blame, because you're not going to blame yourself. I mean, some people might. I mean, that's some tactic. It's like, oh, just don't drink Starbucks and everything will be fine. I mean, yeah, you'll see some improvement there, but at the end of the day, the system isn't set up for you to succeed that well. And then they blame something, and it might be immigrants. That's why you have these populist right-wing parties all over the world who catch these disaffected people and pit this irritation, this disenchantment on immigrants or on people of a different ethnic background, saying that they have stolen your jobs, they have devastated the economy, they have yada 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 yada. And it's really sad to see, because I want to live in a world where we just live in harmony. I mean, we're not supposed to be tribal like that. I mean, we live in a very globalized world. I have people of all, like in Sweden, all type, especially in Stockholm, right? I have grown up. The only Sweden I know is a multicultural Sweden, where you have all kinds of ethnicities, all kinds of types of people, you know? And that's the Sweden I know and love. But I understand that, you know, these older people that didn't grow up in a Sweden like that, maybe they grew up in the more rural parts, you know, and together with maybe, you know, urbanization and all of that stuff. I mean, urbanization has been happening since the Industrial Revolution, but I think you get what I mean. Like there is this romanticized idea of what you once had that is then lost. And change is difficult for everybody. I've also begun to realize that, like humanizing the people who are racist. I think we need to do that as well. And it's a very crucial step to understanding how we can convert them back to being respectable human beings. But about understanding that to them, they have lost something. They imagine that they have lost something. And they can't see that there has simply, you know, things have changed. And change is not necessarily a bad thing, right? But that's how it's interpreted. They've lost something. Uh, so yeah, I think you need to you need to think about the mindset of the people who you want to convert, and not just demonize them. Yeah, where was I? Yeah, class struggle, the people in power. I mean, now more than ever, I think it's been exposed. With the term of the Epstein class, I think is pretty funny, encapsulating the idea that there's a class of people that are above the law, outside the reach of legislation and of moral kind of pushback. The people who are so influential, so all encompassing that they get away with anything. And I think, I mean, it's getting a bit scary, to be completely honest, with finding out more about like the connections between Palantir and basically all the AI companies. How PayPal was founded by Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, huh? What a duo. And everything with the Epstein files. It's a bit overwhelming sometimes, but you just need to keep your head up and understand that these are just a few people in the context of the entire world. These are just a few people, humans. And there are billions of humans who would like to see a more just world. So I think that's inevitable. Yeah. But again, I think that we need to also understand that we need to educate people that it's not about race. It's not about the race differences. Like, it's not about religious differences. It's about power. It's about, you know, uh, propaganda a lot of the time. Understanding that my enemy is not the guy, my neighbor who happens to be a Muslim. My enemy is not my neighbor who happens to be Middle Eastern or black. My my enemy really is the person that is trying to separate us, and that is usually the person who benefits from that, who benefits from having the gaze taken away from the people who have everything. Look, I got a bit lost in my train of thought right there, but look, uh, there are some people that have so much more than they could ever spend or use. And there are some people that have less, way less than they need. And regardless of how this happened, regardless of if the rules of the game allowed this to take place, and for, a really, really rich class, and then, in some places like Sweden, we still have a good middle class, but it's being depleted as the time goes on. And then you have the people who have way less than they need. Regardless of how this came to be, it is materially unjust, is it not? I mean, kids, for God's sake. I mean, it's the trendy thing where a mom and a dad and a child. The child gets 2 Oreos, the mom gets 1, the dad gets none. And then the child takes one of their Oreos, puts it on the plate of the dad. Isn't that simple, right? Isn't that intuitive? And so when you look, I mean, it's the same thing. You see these people with their plates full, like they need to have like thousands of plates. And then there's this one person who doesn't even have any food and their plate is broken. How did you like that analogy? I don't know. But anyways, you get what I mean. Like, it's so intuitive that this is unfair. And of course, like, hard work should be rewarded. I'm not a communist, by the way. Don't try to label me as one. That's not very fun. Don't red scare me. You won't need to, though. But look, I just think that we could arrange our societies in a way where more people can live better lives. Because it's also the case that if we just equal out the scales a little bit, I like to talk about like raising the floor, and raising the floor for the people who have the least, to a point where they have basically everything they need. They can live pretty comfortable lives, like no luxury, nothing like that, but just comfortable lives. They don't have to stress about if they're going to have a job or not, or if they're going to be able to put food on the table or provide for their kids. And the thing is, to raise the floor all the way up to here, you don't need to lower the roof that much, because the roof is so dense. Like, just lower it a little bit and the bottom is going to shoot up. And the living standards of the people on the roof don't change. They have access to the same things they had before. Like, again, Khabib Nurmagomedov, or Habib Nurmagomedov, one of my inspirations. He said in an interview once, he said something that really spoke to me. He said he didn't really care that much about the money, because, one man can only eat one bread in one day. I'll say that again. What are you going to do with millions and millions of dollars when one man can only eat one bread in one day? Yeah. So basically, what the fuck are you doing with all this money, man? Like, you can still only eat one bread until you're full. So there are all these people who have no bread. Maybe you could share some of your loaves, because obviously you won't even be able to eat them all. So yeah. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit exhausted now, but I'm happy that I was able to get this out. I wonder how long I've been going. Let's see. 42 minutes. That's pretty good. Again, I won't bother with editing this or anything. I hope it looked nice. I think so. I haven't shaved. My hair is a mess. I should cut it soon. But anyways, that doesn't really matter for this style of video. Yeah, man, I hope that we can see a little bit more of a just world in due time. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.